Hey, hello, and welcome to another Gnomon industry event. I'm Anton Aparella, Education Lead for Games at Gnomon. I'll be hosting the event this evening. For those joining us for the first time, maybe aren't familiar with Gnomon. Gnomon is a 3D art college specializing in game art, visual effects, and animation education for careers in the entertainment industry. Students on our game art curriculum are trained in the tools and workflows of game production and can go on to work as character artists, environment artists, VFX artists, animators, and more. We're excited to welcome back one of our graduates tonight. Omar Aweidah will be joining us in our panel. He graduated back in 2014 from our digital production program and has been with Sucker Punch for the last 6 years. It's always great to reconnect with our alumni and see the awesome projects that they're working on. Tonight's presentation has been in the works for quite some time. We're honored to host members of Sucker Punch Productions team. They'll be sharing insights into the character creation projects for the Ghost of Yōtei. As always, we want to thank our event sponsors, Dell and NVIDIA, for their continued support of our community and through these industry events. Be sure to stay with us through the end of the presentation for a Q&A session. Feel free to drop your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll be sure to take a look at them and answer as many as we can at the end and possibly during the presentation. A couple of housekeeping notes to begin with. If you need closed captioning, please visit Gnomon YouTube or Facebook streams. If you have a question about Gnomon or how to get started in the full-time program, summer camp, or individual courses, please reach out to admissions@gnomon.edu. Now, for our main event, Ghost of Yōtei. I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter, Omar Aweidah. Omar is a lead character artist at Sucker Punch Productions with over 10 years of experience in game development. His credits include Star Citizen, The Outer Worlds, Ghost of Tsushima, and most recently, Ghost of Yōtei. Omar, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for the introduction. Can you guys all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to share a screen here. Awesome. All right, so I just want to say thank you to Gnomon for putting this together and inviting us out to talk about our most recent project, Ghost of Yōtei. And thanks to everyone who's tuning in. So tonight we're going to chat about the process of creating characters at the edge of Japan. So before we jump in, I just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We're artists from Sucker Punch Productions. We're located in Bellevue, Washington, and we were founded in 1997. Some of the games include Rocket Robot on Wheels, the Sly Cooper series, the Infamous series, and most recently, Ghost of Tsushima, and what we're here to talk about today, which is Ghost of Yōtei. And a little bit about the people you're going to be hearing from. I'm Omar, lead character artist. Just kind of did introduction, so I'll kind of do this really quickly. Lola, our senior concept artist. Emery, our senior staff character artist. And Ellie, senior character artist. And just to give a little bit of context for those of you who are tuning in for the art side who might not really know about Ghost of Yōtei, it's set 300 years after Ghost of Tsushima. And Ghost of Yōtei is a story of vengeance set in Japan's wild north, in what is now modern-day Hokkaido. It follows Atsu, a haunted lone mercenary who journeys through the rugged beauty of Ezo in search of the 6 outlaws who murdered her family 16 years earlier. In her pursuit, Atsu begins to take on a legend of her own, becoming the vengeful spirit known as the Onryo. And a little bit of background, the teams we work mostly with, like the character art team, we talk about concept and tech art a lot, but all these teams help support bringing a character to life. And a character lives beyond just its artistic execution, and the models themselves are just a small piece of the large storytelling effort. So here are some of the amazing teams that help bring our entire cast to life. And to kind of go over some of the challenges we'll be talking about today, before production and during production, we had a few of these challenges came to light. how can a team of our size bring life to the frontier of Ezo? That's making characters at scale. How can we maintain high artistic standards across all characters beyond just our main cast? How can we support the character design, or how can the character design help support the larger visual identity of the open world and create synergy with the environment? And how can characters support the player fantasy? And that's a wandering mercenary at the edge of Japan. And to break down some of the topics we're going to cover, Lola's going to talk about character concept and ideation. I'm going to talk about character types, scale, and modularity. Emery is going to go into hero outfits and overall sculpt philosophy. And Ellie's going to hit us up with closing construction, importance of research influence design. And first, I'm going to pass it off to our amazing concept artist, Lola.
Thanks, Omar. All right. Hey guys, I'm Lola. I'll be walking through these 4 character concepts in Ghost of Yōtei that are all very different from each other. And I'll break down design approaches behind each of them. So let's start with one of the designs we had a lot of fun with, which is the Spider Lady armor for Atsu. So this is a mythic story about once great general who's consumed by grief and bloodshed, whose spirit ends up lingering in his armor, with Spider Lady blooming whenever blood is spilled. So when I first started on this, I was given a pretty fleshed out narrative for the mission with a backstory and a setting and lore and everything. So the first step was to break it down and distill the core elements. A simple way I like to think about it is if this guy had a LinkedIn profile with everything distilled down to his core traits, so that way I get the clear picture of who I'm designing for right away. And then I ask myself, what would this armor look like if it actually felt like his? So before drawing anything, I also wanted to understand the emotional core of the story and what's the mission is trying to make the player feel. By the way, these are some super awesome 2D cutscenes done by Zhang Pao. So after going through this narrative backstory, what really stood out to me were a few core ideas. So first is Spider Lady itself, which is the main visual anchor. And then emotionally, it's a story about grief mixed with a sense of tragic beauty and a dash of eeriness. So based on these keywords, I put together this mood board. The main tone we were aiming for here was death, grief, a sense of eerie, tragic beauty. So this was a way for me to quickly translate the tone I had in mind into something visual, something that helps me ground a direction and starts coming up with design ideas. So next challenge was figuring out progression across 3 ranks. So these are the final armor lined up made by an amazing character team. Since each armor has 3 ranks, so it's important to also think about how it evolves, not just in shape and color, but also in the material used across 3 ranks. Another key factor is that as the player upgrades the armor, it needs to feel more rewarding visually. At the same time, the design language needs to stay consistent with the overall tone as it evolves. So that's where this idea came in. Since the Spider Lady, the curse, and the grief are the core elements of this armor, so we thought it'd be interesting to use something like the Spider Lady life cycle, not just as a visual metaphor, but also to tie it directly into the rank progression. And the idea of the curse gradually consuming the wearer, which is the general, and Atsu. So for rank 1 design, it represents the butt stage, since this is the starting point of the progression. So the idea was to just keep everything lightweight and agile with a more form-fitted silhouette. We wanted the material to feel just simple and practical at this stage, something grounded and believable. So the main armor and the material choice here is based on this Yoloi Katabina, which is a lightweight armor jacket that integrates small plates with a kusari chainmail combined with a softer fabric coated for the arms. So this material basically provides protection but still allows for a lot of mobility. And this is the concept art for rank 1. So for this rank, the goal was to establish a grounded, functional base layer, something that feels believable while leaving room for the design to gradually evolve and get more visually intricate in higher ranks. And then moving to rank 2, it moves into this half bloom stage. This is where we actually started to introduce more rigid material, as you can see here. So we began to introduce more armor plates and skill plating, so the protection level increases. But we still wanted the overall silhouette to maintain this lightweight overall feeling, because it shouldn't just like suddenly jump into a full-fledged samurai armor just yet. So for the forms are still pretty streamlined, and but with more layer protection. We also introduced more secondary color here, which is the blue, represents grief. And also the color red also starts to take up more space across the design, hinting that the curse and the bloodthirsty aspect of the character are becoming stronger. And moving to rank 3, this is the fully bloom stage. We wanted the armor to feel more protected, basically more ceremonial, more prestigious at this stage. You can see the introduction of more elaborate kabuto helmet here with a spider lady motif integrated into the design. And there's also this larger shoulder armor that gives the character a much stronger presence silhouette-wise. We also introduced more delicate elements like the silk kimono sleeves. So these fabrics actually help break up the rigid shapes of the shoulder armor and adds more flow to the silhouette, which makes it feel more fitting for Atsu overall. And the red also become more dominant, reflects that the general has becoming fully consumed and bloodthirsty. Also, the tension between grief and bloodlust is what I found interesting about this character as well. So we use these two colors as the core palette for this design. Here's another interesting challenge with this set, is that in the story, this armor originally belonged to this general, this guy. But from a design standpoint, it has to fit Atsu first. So the question becomes, how do we bridge these two identities? Another tricky part was that, as you can see on the left, historically, samurai armors tend to be pretty rigid and heavy. And on the right is a concept done by Mitch. This is one of Jin's armor sets. So for Spider Lady set, we pushed toward something that more streamlined and visually lighter, something that reads naturally on Atsu. And this is the final concept art. All right, next, let's talk about Ninetales, which is very different from the Spider Lady set, but also one of the more fun and challenging ones. So who they are? They're a covered Shinobi faction led by Kitsune. They're this very stealthy, very good at ambush, infiltration, deception, stuff like that. So they're definitely not your great neighbors. And this is what their turf looks like. Very snowy environment with low visibility, which is perfect for ambushes and give you surprise jump scares along the way. So at the very beginning, there was a pretty clear gameplay direction. So this faction will be split into two distinct groups. And under each group, there are 3 ranks, which is ground, veteran, elite, and a leader, to show the overall enemy difficulty progression. And one group leans more shinobi, focused on stealth, camouflage, and ambush, and the other group is more melee focused. So these two groups needs to feel visually distinct from each other, while still feel like they belong to the same faction. So that's the main challenge. And after some research, we found that in Japanese folklore, kitsunes are often divided into 2 opposing types. So on the left is Zenko, which are kind of like nice fox, and they're more benevolent type. And on the right, it's no Gitsune, which are this naughty one, like more benevolent fox. So they represent this idea of duality and balance, which I feel like a great foundation for the faction design. So I use this idea of duality and balance to guide the visual direction and start exploring ideas. And these are two super quick, like initial chicken scribbles just to get the ideas down. And from here, I built two separate mood boards to define each group. On the left, the Shinobi group, we leaned into the color white as the main color, and lots of fur materials, so they feel more agile and can naturally blend into snowy environment. And for the melee group, we took inspiration from these performers in traditional Japanese puppet theaters. As you can see, they wear these like cloth hoods that covers their entire head, which creates super interesting silhouettes. And also, they are meant to be invisible, so you focus on the puppet, and which just feel like a perfect reference for this melee group. Then we also introduced something like the straw material, the rough the fabrics to give them a more grounded feel. Another layer of challenge was the rank progression within each group. So each group has 3 ranks, and we needed a clear way to differentiate them visually, since camouflage plays a pretty big role in the gameplay. So we tied their color and material choices to the environment, both for functionality and to reinforce rank readability. So at a ground level, since they're in the lowest tier, so their camouflage ability isn't fully developed yet. So we use something that it's like more common back in the Edo periods, like these indigo dyed cloth mixed with off-white materials. And as they move into veteran, the colors start to desaturate a little bit, like the indigo dye color, which help them blend better into the environment. And for the elite level, the color almost fully faded out, turning to pure white, which allowed them to camouflage almost completely in snow and perform some 10 up 10 jump scares. And this is the full lineup across both groups and tiers. You can see the distinction in a color palette and silhouette, but they're still tied together through a shared design language, so that's our goal. And once the concept is done, it's important to clearly communicate the finer detail to the character team. So I put together sheets like this that breaks down things like material choices, wear and tear, and color subtleties. So the intent come across clearly without any guesswork or miscommunication. All right, last but not least, these are 2 very different character designs. So our main goal here was to really bring out their distinct personality through the visuals. So for each of them, I try to find just one defining trait that really makes them stand out. So on the left is Shiro. He's this swindler bandit type character, very flamboyant, has a very loud sense of fashion taste. So we wanted to really just bring that side of him out. And we referenced something called kabukimono, which were these flamboyant samurai back in the Edo period, known for their pretty exaggerated fashion taste and behavior. So we leaned into that idea and pushed a much more over-the-top color palette. As you can see here, we incorporated material like silk, almost like this peacock-like colors, just to bring out his personality. And then lastly is our absolutely favorite snake, one of the Yotei 6. So his bio is pretty interesting. So he's described as more of this weasel-like, very sharp and cunning, since he's also this first tutorial boss. So one of the main design goals we had actually for this guy was just he gotta have a super punchable face. So with that clear goal in mind, we leaned into features like these beautiful rotten teeth and like greasy hair that really look like it hasn't been washed for years, just to really help bring that punchable quality of his out. We also looked at criminal tattoos from the Edo period. So back then, these tattoos were often used to mark criminals and identify them, like branding them as outcasts. And actually, each region had its own unique design, so which is super interesting. So we felt like, hey, that was a really good fit for the snake. It helps reinforce his background and add this cool boss with a story layer to his character. And we also looked at a lot of snake references, and we incorporate these scale patterns into his costume to reinforce that snake motif. And he ended up being a character that we both love him and hate him at the same time. So yeah, I guess the research paid off in the end. All right, I'll kick it over to Omar, and he's gonna walk through some super cool character production stuff.
Thanks, Lola. All right. So I'm going to chat about some of our different types of characters. Let's see here if you can see my screen. All right. So to start out production, we decided to break our characters into 3 separate categories. Some of those you saw in those previous presentations. So this helps us determine how much attention, direction, and time goes into each asset. So we have our primary characters, and they're generally completely custom with little to no shared elements. We have our secondary characters. They're like our enemies, our senseis, our artisans, and they often have like some modularity to them, but it's usually limited to staying within their own faction. And then we have our tertiary characters, which is our general population. They're heavily modular, and they're really used to fill out the world. So our primary characters, like I said, get the most amount of attention on a per asset basis. This is an example of Lord Saito. He's head of the Saito clan, and he's responsible for killing Atsu's family. These characters often include kind of all the stuff that you see here, like multiple costumes, hairstyles, weapon variation, and part of our game also occurs during different time periods and different story beats. So a different look at those times really helps to push the immersion. And when it comes to weapons, we use the term katana fantasy a lot. For us, that means a katana is an extension of the character themselves. And our main characters get these things called unique saya kits, or they're kind of like the scabbards for the sword, to complement their personality. And for the primary cast, we also use scanned faces. To play Lord Saito, we were lucky enough to have the return of the amazing actor Fedor Chin. He played Lord Adachi, seen here on the left in the first Ghost of Tsushima game. And needless to say, we really wanted him back to play a larger role in Yote. Once we have the scan, we do an augmentation of the geometry. In this case, it's adding weight, additional skin imperfections, sun damage, eye bags, eyeshadow, and even aging him up a little bit to fit the character for the role. We also build a lot of cinematic specific variants for key story beats, like when a character might look different during a very specific moment or something. Our cinematic team does really great work, so we try to match that with our character detail. This is the Oni, and for his reveal, he has a huge scar and a dead eye, both remnants of the wounds given to him by young Atsu while defending her brother Jubei. We have another example of Saito demonstrating one of his various looks. He's completely drenched in blood, and we're using this to help intensify the intimacy and brutality of the scene after he massacres her family. And here we can see a lot of the subtle detail in Atsu. She has chapped lips, small scarring, dirt buildup, but also a touch of eyeliner to help her eyes pop on screen. And the snake is a good example of pushing that more degraded villain look. And like Lola said, trying to give him as much of a punchable face. So we try to like lean into those things that made him unique. trying to make him have like broken capillaries in the nose, greasy, degenerate feel. He's sweaty. The sweat is actually like, in this cutscene, is actually like animating down his body. He has broken teeth. He's got bloodshot eyes and oily hair. So anything we could do to really sell that moment. And we also try to get that level of detail to every area of the character and not just their faces. We're always looking for opportunities to push the detail of these characters and immerse the player. So here are some examples of that level of detail we want to achieve on these primary character armor sets, and that Emery's probably going to go in a little bit deeper later. So here are the silk laces on the doe. The doe is like the chest armor, like the core chest armor piece, and you can see Saito's tiger crest. You can also see here these epaulets that repeat that tiger pattern. The epaulets are on this big jacket called a jinbaori that's sleeveless. The epaulets are actually a Western design influence that came later, which is pretty cool. Then we have this massive tiger painting onto the snakeskin jinbaori, enforcing his vicious theme. And then we also pay attention to even the small things, like this decorative inro box, which is a small container that had things like tobacco, medicine, and small items. It's painted with the landscapes of Hokkaido, and on top you can see a small tiger Natsuki, which is this little like wooden figure that helps keep it hung onto the belt. And here you can see the final result. Our primary characters go through the highest level of scrutiny. They're also just more likely to keep evolving through production, so they just have more time spent on them. This is our lighting team set up a virtual studio for us to review them so we can maintain consistency across all characters and review them in consistent lighting setups. That lets us see them at the highest fidelity across custom lighting scenarios. And we also want to make sure that they read in extreme close-up, but also have a strong silhouette. But the most important thing above fidelity is like, does this character have emotional resonance and tone? And then here we're jumping into our secondary characters. And like I said, these are some of the enemies. They don't get the same level of fully custom attention, but we still want to make sure that every character can hold up in a close cutscene. These characters share modular components within their faction, as you can see here highlighted in blue. That helps us speed up production on each additional character. It also helps communicate rank progression and more dangerous enemies. And it reinforces a clear visual motif across all the factions. So each group ends up with a stronger visual identity. Here's another example of our enemy faction, like the Oni Raiders that you just saw. We swap elements like helmets, masks, armors, and even body type to give them variation. And even though we're sharing parts, the goal isn't just efficiency. We still want each character to hold up and feel distinct from all others in that faction. And a big part of this is creating like variety across the world, while also helping to hide some of the repetition that comes from a modular assembly like this. So what we do is, even within their faction or archetype or identity, we have another layer of like sub-modularity to give them unique differences. We do this for our lowest level grunts, but even up to our highest and more rare enemies. Here we have our Oni Raider faction again. The grunt looks a bit less intimidating while also having variation. And our elite leaders on the right, they're using similar armor, but they're also still visually distinct. And we add this variation since you see a lot of grunts, and they can at times be the most common enemy, but the harder, rare enemies can be more memorable to the player. So we're constantly weighing how much uniqueness we try to place within a given faction by evaluating how much screen time they'll receive, but also how impactful are they going to be to the player. We also have ninjas and Saito special forces. And for leaders, we sometimes add a little bit of like gold element that allows them to stand out if a mission calls for it. Because sometimes we'll have to have like a special character or a bounty target. And we don't want them necessarily to look the same if they have like other similar looking enemies around them. So usually see these people like one at a time. Then finally, we have our tertiary characters. And once we get into our tertiary characters, the level of modularity increases drastically. We build a wide range of outfits and interchangeable pieces. When the characters spawn, their looks are largely randomized. That helps populate the world with more variety at scale. So we say essentially random because it's still a curated system. NPCs only pull from a combination that we've approved, like the character team has looked at and approved. So we control things like hairstyle options, face pools, body types. We also control like which color combinations can appear together, because fully random combinations can create things like color clashes or just like our NPCs making undesirable fashion choices. So even at this level, we still want strong art direction and control. So one of the most important elements is head variety. To create head variety, we start from standardized head topology, which is a pretty common practice. All heads share the same base structure. From there, we sculpt the primary forms, and those forms are developed within defined facial regions. This helps us preserve deformation and create believable and consistent animation. It also allows us to share texture maps across all heads to increase variety. Because the UVs are shared, we can also project things like displacement maps during sculpting between heads. Sometimes we create new displacement maps. Other times we reuse and adapt existing ones, and we break down those displacements as primary, secondary, and tertiary layers in our sculpting software, ZBrush. And then we finish it with a final adjustment pass. And then next, we bake the high poly, we paint the diffuse maps. At this stage, we're adding things that kind of like tell a story, right? So complexion, dirt, grime, gloss, occlusion. And then before export, we actually remove what we call the melon layer. And our skin tone is actually added in engine so that we have variation within the character's skin tone as well. And that's also randomized and done from a curated pool, depending on the culture. And we do this to give us like more flexibility, skin tone ranges. We also assemble the eyes as a separate layered system. It includes common elements like the eyelashes and eyebrows, ambient occlusion that helps provide an additional level of detail to set the eye. But we also do these things called like blend meshes between the eyeball and the eyelid, which help make the transition a little bit softer, or a wet line that simulates the surface tension of fluid buildup between where the eye meets the lower lid. And we also try to create another blend mesh that blends the caruncle, like the little tear duct in the corner of your eye, with the eye itself, so we don't see these hard geometric lines. So here's an example of a single head pushed through several variants. So we have our base variant, which has what we just talked about, some light dirt, some scratches and stuff. Then into our damage version, and this is used for battle-scarred enemies or other intimidating characters, always leaning in to trying to tell a story. Then we have a slightly cleaner, younger version, and finally, one covered in blood. Like Ezo is a dangerous place, and the characters are often coming from battle, or maybe they just got beat up or something. So these kinds of variation help support the character's visual identity. And it lets a single character reflect different story beats over time, like we chatted about with the primary characters. And of course, each head also needs a little bit of hair. So period accurate hair requires a ton of research. Here's a chart illustrating various Japanese hairstyles. I was actually able to take this photo when I was visiting Matsumai Town in Hokkaido. It kind of had this little barbershop replica, which is really cool. And fortunately, this is a highly represented time period for entertainment. So even though we don't have a lot of photos, we still have a lot of props, wigs, as well as like movies, books, hairstyle guides. We even looked at like YouTube tutorials, since even simple looking hairstyles can be deceivingly complex. We want to try to get as many shots as we can from as many different angles so that we can be as culturally accurate as possible. And when picking hairstyles to do, it's important to also think of the visual identity of the game, but also its cultural context. Japan at that time period used hairstyle not only to communicate fashion, but also status, right? So we work with cultural advisors to make sure the right hairstyles were worn in the right situations. For example, the one on the left is a chonmage hairstyle, which is very popular during that period, but worn mostly from people of a higher social status. And then we have our bandit hair on the right, which is like wild, it's unkempt, it's messier, and we're trying to communicate like somebody camping out and fighting. And then we also consider like what activities are the people doing, right? The woman on the left is one of our innkeepers. She's got a more elaborate hairstyle, while we have our warrior on the right with pulled back, a bit messy, it's ready for combat. We also have indigenous Ainu people. We wanted to make sure we represented their culture, not just through their fashion, but also through their hairstyles as well. And then we also had to toss in some of the more outlandish and fun hairstyles that, you know, we try to get people talking on like Reddit and stuff. This is one of my favorite characters, Taro. He's like a little kid merchant and he has this like amazing haircut. So finally, we have our system in action. Here's kind of a video kind of showing that. Just a bunch of people standing in a field like they would do, but hitting our objective of looking different. So we can fill a town with these kind of people and it would have some life to it. And this all culminates in what we call our cast list, which is all the actors who take place in our game. So to give you a sense of scale, we have about 526 roles, and some of those roles play multiple parts. So scale starts to grow exponentially. And we try to make sure we not only maintain high quality, we tell a story through the visuals, and we support our fantasy, but also make sure we can fulfill the needs of production at scale. And then, yeah, I'll pass it off to Emery, who can now do a little bit deeper dive into some of our player construction or player costume construction.
All right, thanks, Omar. Should be sharing. All right. Hey, I'm Emery. I'll be talking about player fantasy and how we support that through Atsu's armor and gear in Ghost of Yōtei. I will talk and go into a little bit more detail about technical aspects of hero armor creation, and then I'm going to show our step-by-step process. In order to immerse the player into the world of Ghost of Yōtei, we utilize visual progression and player fantasy through the hero character. There are 4 aspects to our approach. Hero armors with ranks, so basically armors and costumes that Atsu can wear. I will touch on the ranks a little bit later. Cosmetic gear like masks and hats. We have hero weapons, and then also dye variations for armors. I will start by displaying in depth one of our hero armor sets called the Armor of the Undying. The life cycle of an armor set starts at the design and narrative stage. Once the gameplay and narrative requirements around that specific set is decided, then the request then goes to the concept artists, where ideation and 2D concept art is created, as Lola showed in depth. Our job as the character artist comes after the concept stage, and it's basically to realize the concept in 3D. It's not as straightforward as it sounds, though, since 2D shapes don't always transfer perfectly into 3D. And sometimes it's game development, right? So technical or gameplay-related reasons may actually require us to push some stuff we see on the concept. You can see here on this example that we ended up swapping the places of the cape and the large shoulder pad on rank 2 and 3, as opposed to the concept. Like here you can see on the concept at the top there, the large cape is on the left side of the character and the shoulder pad is on the right, where it's reversed on the final model that ended up in the game. This is not because the concept doesn't work. It works great, but because we have a new gameplay element introduced, which was Atsu's Revenge Sash. A long strip of cloth with the names of the Yote 6 on it. It serves a crucial story purpose. And the sash is tied to the left side of the belt on the hip. And Atsu basically uses the sash to kind of cross off the names of Yotei 6 with their blood after killing them, which is pretty badass and metal. But with the addition of the sash and realizing the concept in 3D, seeing things in 3D form, like from different angles, required us to make some small changes, basically. Once the sash was added, and then the large cape and 2 katanas, the sash, they were all on the same side of the character, on the left side of the character. And it was kind of disturbing the overall weight distribution, making the character look too heavy on one side, with only the shoulder pad as a counterbalance on the right. Swapping the cape and the shoulder pad allowed to redistribute the weight with the addition of the sash in the 3D model. With the world of Ghost of Yōtei taking shape and color, as you can see, lots and lots of color in our game, as the production progressed, another thing that we pushed for most characters in general was color and contrast. You can see how vibrant and varied the colors of the environments of our game is, and we basically want the characters to pop against the environments while still keeping a consistent visual identity with the overall vibe of the game. So making the cape a kind of a striking red velvet material and pushing the contrast on the white lacquer helped us make Atsu stand out and work with the environment and not get blended in. Creating a 3D armor set requires first and foremost an in-depth understanding of the purpose and the visual language of the set piece. So think about what story are we trying to tell the player with this piece of visual art, right? Some armors might be more stealth focused, some more offense focused, some more defensive, stuff like that. So for this particular armor set, for example, with the Armor of the Undying, we wanted it to, as the name suggests, make it harder for Atsu to die in. So it's a defensive armor. As such, we also wanted it to look bulky and formidable. Once we have a clear idea about the direction, we then go into the nitty-gritty of character creation, which has several steps. High poly model, low poly model, and then we do textures and materials. And it's also essential for any game development lifecycle to try and push the limits of the tech we have available and collaborate with other teams to bring out the best visual experience for the player and improve upon what we had made previously. This could be things like asking for new tools from the programming team, right, so that we can speed up our process. Or it can be a new shader feature request from the rendering team, or working with the tech art team in order to improve class simulation on capes and armor layers, which we have a lot of capes and armor layers in our game. We start the high poly model with some basic shapes, and then we define those to create our primary shapes. And then we go into a bit more detail to create our secondary shapes. Once we're happy with those, we move on to the tertiary shapes. And then finally, the surface details come along, which most of which come during texturing and material setup, which I will touch on a little bit later. This stage is the foundation of our blockout, and it is a vital step in character creation. So at this stage, it's more about the importance of each shape to the overall look, as opposed to the shape itself. Silhouette is also another crucial aspect of 3D game character creation, as it is one of the most prominent visuals that the player will be seeing during gameplay, alongside contrast and color information, that is. Here on this example, we tried to push the silhouette of the armor in order to make it look a little bit chunkier and even a little stylized, so to speak, to serve the story. We pushed the silhouette breaks while still trying to keep a somewhat feminine and agile look to the armor, since it would go on Atsu. Here you can see even these like small plates on the upper arm, they kind of push and break the silhouette. Same thing for this rope at the wrist. It's breaking the silhouette, right? Or the stepping of the tassets here, or the stepping on the helmet. Or even things like, if you look at this exaggerated shape of the pants, it's not super realistic. We kind of push and exaggerate those shapes, hence that's what I mean by stylized, but it's serving the overall look and feel of the armor that we're trying to shoot for. We made the hips a little bit wider, push the shoulders in a little bit, as well as having the arm and leg armors tighter around the limbs, as you can see. contouring the underlying anatomy to keep the agile look while still having an armored and defensive feel to the overall set, and still making it look kind of intimidating and badass. Lastly, for any hero armor with multiple ranks, it is vital to show an obvious visual progression through the ranks, which is best done in the blockout stage, as you see here, before adding all the intricate details. The reason for that is because most of the progression identity should primarily come off of the larger shapes and the silhouette, and then also later with color and material information, as opposed to just the intricate detail work. It is also important here to successfully transfer the decisions made on the concept into the 3D model. Lola has touched on this already, but it bears repeating since it's a very important aspect of progression that also applies to 3D model in its own way, because you have all these different angles that you have to keep in mind, and it's best done in blackout stage. Once the blackout is good to go, we then move on to sculpting the details. At this stage, we want the sculpted details to have a cohesive rhythm and flow across the whole set. So not just individual elements within themselves, but including mask, helmet, everything should be consistent. We also want to make sure we're actually constructing the armor in a way that would make visual sense. So folds and wrinkles of the fabric materials should be in the right spots based on how the cloth moves and rests. The construction of the armor should make sense at first glance, like how the laces are tied to hold the armor pieces together, or how the plates interact with chainmail, how some of the armor pieces sit on the body, stuff like that. It can be tempting and easy to get lost in adding too much detail, but having some restraint and adding areas of rest will serve the overall piece better. Having relatively empty and simple rest areas around the focal points, like the face, will help the player focus on that area more effectively. You can see here that the areas framing the face are relatively simple and empty, shown in green here, so that the eye can focus on the face itself, in this case, a kind of a detailed mask. Like most of these type of decisions, we follow and stay consistent to the concept art, obviously. But that said, it's a character artist's job to know and apply these quote-unquote rules. We should know what to look for in the concept, since all these type of stuff would be applied to the whole armor in 3D. We also pay significant attention to material definitions at this stage. So even without any color or roughness information, the materials should still read and behave correctly. Lastly, we add wear and tear detail to break up the pristine look of the armor and make it look like it's been worn and used. It's all part of the overall story we're trying to tell with that particular armor set. While working on this armor, we wanted to push the variety we have on the masks, and we wanted to give Atsu a more kind of armored look, especially for rank 3. To that end, I made some 3D mask concepts in ZBrush and worked with the concept artist, with Mitch Morazer in this case, to figure out the best one for this particular armor set. We brainstormed together, came up with ideas, things like that, and then we decided on the top right one here, the black mask with the white mustache. That's the one ended up in the game. We actually also made a version without the nose piece, as historically the nose piece of these armored samurai masks called the Mempo masks, the nose piece comes off, and it's actually a significant enough difference in the look that we thought it granted a new cosmetic, and also it just gave us another version of the mask that would give us an extra cosmetic option in the game without any additional modeling or texturing work. So it's always good, and I would say necessary, to keep gameplay in mind while working on the game itself. We are developers, but we're also players at the same time, so it's best to keep that in mind on every decision making we do. Next comes the low poly stage, where we take our high poly model and we give it a clean topology so that it can basically function in the game engine. This is the model that gets textured and animated, and eventually this is the model that would show up in the game itself. We make sure the low poly model hits our technical requirements such as having a clean and continuous edge flow between overlapping parts, to have a lot of overlapping parts on samurai armors. We add extra edge loops to the high deformation areas like elbows, knees, hands, wrists, shoulders. So basically joints that move and deform a lot during combat animations, sitting, kneeling, all that kind of stuff. So adding edge loops, extra edge loops there, reduce the risk of deformation at those areas. Make sure that we have a clean, even topology as much as we can on the areas that will use our cloth simulation tech. So you can see here on the cape, obviously that uses cloth simulation, and we try to keep even quads, nice clean topology there. But cloth is not the only thing that uses simulation. Ropes, tassels, even armor parts like the tassets here or the thigh shields, they all use simulation. So we try to give them nice clean topology as much as we can. We pay special attention to the bust area, especially since it's the most prominent during cutscenes and story beats, cinematics, things like that. And also, having enough edge support at the rounded shapes to prevent any faceting is always a good idea. Next step is adding color and material definition to the character using the low poly model we've just made. We project the high poly model details to the low poly model, and then we start texturing. The most important thing we look for at this stage are contrast, so that the color pops and stands out in the game environment, like I mentioned before. We look for temperature balance, so even for monochromatic costumes, it is actually important to have cooler and warmer tones of that same color to have a nice balanced look. Realistic material definition is very important. Specular breakups so that surfaces don't look extremely even and smooth. Proper color and value variation, and also lastly, wear and tear, aging, that kind of stuff to give more life to the armor. For this particular set, the Armor of the Undying, we chose to go with a brushed and kind of marbled white lacquer look, so that some texture and color can come out during close-ups and photo mode shots and like cinematics, things like that. And it's not all pristine, kind of plastic-looking white. With the addition of small chips and dents, the armor starts to come to life. Finally, we add things like tiling surface details and fuzz to some materials, like the pants here, to go further push the distinction between different material types, and this will make the character look more varied overall. So, having fabric pants versus hard, shiny lacquer. We have metal chainmail, ropes. All these various materials help bring a living, breathing armor to life. This is also where our quality bar comes in, making sure all the details look crisp and that they hold up to close-up shots, as well as all the primary shapes work and technical limitations are met. We do the final touches and look development at this stage also, and utilize and push the tech we have available in order to achieve the best look possible. As a specific example here, looking at the chainmail on the arm here on the left, you can see every individual interlacing ring, right? It's actually made by using a tiling material over a flat plane that gives us the illusion of depth and dimension. So it's basically just a tube with a tiling chainmail material just applied on top, and then it looks like a dimensional chainmail with some depth to it. Once the textures are complete, we usually create dye variations for Atsu's armors as a way of adding customization and variety to our hero costumes. Customization is important in the sense that, even though we're telling a very specific story, right, Atsu's revenge story, it always helps the player's immersion if they can customize their own gear and create unique looks for their version of Atsu. Think of it as different visual flavors of the specific armor to support player fantasy. So dye variations need to be distinct from each other. They need to be rewarding, cohesive with the overall style of the game. And then also they're sometimes tied to gameplay and narrative elements, like When you save a black dye merchant, they give you a black variation of the armor you're wearing, stuff like that. We try to utilize not just color variations, but also pattern and material differences too when we create different dyes for the same armor. And this basically helps us add more variety and visual interest while enhancing the customization experience of the player. Cosmetic gear like hats, masks, weapon dyes also serve the same purpose of helping the immersion of the player into the world of Ghost of Yōtei and Atsu's revenge story. Players like mixing and matching their gear, and they like creating the best look they have in mind for specific missions or their play styles or their or the environment that the character is in. Think of a stealth mission, for example, in a sort of snowy environment. Maybe you want to wear all white ninja armor to better blend in visually. So we would like to be able to provide the player with such options, but we still have them curated in order to keep them cohesive with the overall artistic style and vision that we have. Finally, weapons play a big part in both gameplay and Atsu's personal revenge story, so they're a crucial aspect of the player fantasy. We aim for each weapon set to look different so that they feel rewarding when the player gets a new weapon. We also want the weapons to, again, be consistent with the overall style of the game, and specifically Atsu's costume, since the weapons become essentially part of the costume once worn on a person. We try to tell a story with each weapon whenever we can, and even if it's not too obvious, even if it's something small, it kind of adds depth and dimension to the overall experience. Like how the giant Odachi sword you see here of the Odachi Sensei shows the specific symbols of the clan he belongs to. Here on the Suba, you can see the clan symbols. It's also repeated through the patterning here on the hilt. Or we can take a look at Lord Saito's Naginata. It contains the motifs from each Yotei 6 member, the tiger being Lord Saito himself. You can see the spider's webbing on the Suba here, or the dragon right next to that. The snake is on the shaft of the weapon. You can see the Minuki, the silver Minuki here is shaped as the Kitsune, is a fox. And then also we have the Oni at the other end of the weapon. So everything from hero armor sets to dye variations, from different cosmetic gear to weapons, help with the immersion and player fantasy. So they're all an essential part of our game development pipeline. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass the mic to Ellie.
Thank you, Emery. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Share. Okay. I think my mic is okay. Hello, I'm Ellie. I'm going to talk about how we built the outfit based on traditional clothing. It was basically research a lot and learning strict cultural rule and fight against the technical difficulty. Making outfit based on traditional clothing is not just mimicking a general shape. We had to learn how the garments were traditionally made and how to wear them properly. We spent tons of time digging through historical archives to make sure we are being culturally authentic. The great things about the traditional clothing, there are a huge amount of reference out there, like centuries of museum archive. And people still wearing it even today. We could find the accurate sewing patterns, what kind of fabric it is made with, and how to put the garment together. And lastly, how to wear it. Especially kimono has very strict rule how to wear it, and lots of hidden rules that people might not know. Here's some example. One simple example is a color direction. Color should be always left over right from wearer's perspective. If it's ever reversed, that means that the person who is wearing this cloth is deceased already. So if you're making living character, this tiny detail matters. Also, traditional clothing reflects people's history and value. Common mistake that people make is mixing Japanese, Chinese, Korean culture together and just create generic Asian role. There is very conflicted and sensitive history between them, and we understand that. And we understood the weight of the representation, so we work really hard to avoid the mistake. That applies especially when we work with Ainu outfit. Ainu is indigenous ethnic group who reside in northern Japan. They are a big part of Hokkaido culture, and our game is based on Hokkaido. We cannot make a game in that setting without Ainu. Ainu have their own distinct, deeply rooted history that is unknown to most of people outside of the culture. We went through several culture check steps throughout the production to make sure every outfit was proper, distinct, and respectful. Let's talk more about kimono, the Japanese traditional clothing. This game is based on Edo, Japan, which means all characters should wear kimono. It was really important for us to get it right. Interesting thing about kimono, they're sharing similar pattern and construction, whether it's formal wear or just daily use. Even men and women's kimono shares a similar pattern and construction. They're basically straight rectangular patterns, the panels. I don't know if you guys ever saw the kimono fabric roll called tanmono, which is left lower image. It's just a long rectangular fabric roll. And kimono is made by just cutting this roll in certain way and stitching them together according to very strict rule. The real difference in final look actually comes from kichike. Kichike is the traditional art and rule of how to wear kimono. There are even professionals for this. There's strict rules how to fold it, how to layer it, and tie the fabric. There's even multiple ways to tie obi, which is the belt, depending on gender, age, or the occasion. With knowing all this information, we thought we can create our own marvelous designer workflow. Since all the character wears kimono and they are sharing similar pattern and construction, we thought we really thought we can find a way to speed up the production. And here is our marvelous designer workflow. First, we create the base file. We create core library of garment, standard men's and women's kimono, hakama, haori, all the basic garments of Japanese traditional clothing. Next, fit them to different body type. Since they're sharing similar pattern and patterns are so standardized, we only need to spend minimal effort to fit them to different body type, either adult, child, regular body type, or big guys. After fitting them everything to different body type, we adjust the clothing to fit each character. Here's some example. The first image is called Hantan, which is padded jacket for winter, and base file is just draped down. And to fit certain character, we wrap with a belt. And next image is a samurai. And samurai generally just wear formal kimono, hakama, and haori. And as you can see, we adjust the outfit to support the katana. Next is Shiro, which is Lola already shared. And to fit this character, we layered a bunch of kimonos and one sleeve down. Also, the back part of the kimono is tucked into the belt. And here's another example. It's Oni Raid Archer. This kimono was basically fit to the slimmer body, but to get this characteristic, we put one sleeve down, and also we made igote, which is one arm sleeve protector for archery. And here is some Achu example. I will go over more detail later, but I'm just showing you as an example of how to fit in the character. Even though we want to do everything proper way, we always hit technical difficulty. especially close simulation in game is so hard. If you see the kimono has this long rectangular slit. It's pretty iconic for kimono, but it is a nightmare for clipping and animation during the combat. So we had to compromise for the sake of gameplay. How we compromise is we narrow down some sleeve and then tighten the armpit part, which was another issue for deformation. It keeps somewhat iconic look of player expected, but also allow the character to move, fight without fabric breaking too much. Also, sometimes we have to make artistic decision to character stand out, but those decisions rooted in our research. We want to create unique and cool character without breaking the crucial rule of the culture. Apply all these lessons to Onyo armor. Onyo armor is the main outfit of Achu wearing in game. Achu is a hunted, sarcastic, cold-hearted, Ronin-like mercenary driven by vengeance. While keeping this in mind, let's go over the concept in detail. She is a female character, and she wears a kimono, hakama, harness, chest armor, and cape. After analyzing concept, we have to make certain decision. And first decision we made is because of the technical reason. We decided to give her the men's hakama, even though there is a women's hakama exists. As you see this image, women's hakama usually have a higher waistline and the hakama is made as skirt, which was not great for combat animation and also not really fit for Ronin characteristic. In other hand, men's hakama has a lower waistline and it is made with pants, which works better for the in-engine deformation and also fit more in the Ronin characteristic. But we still want to give her some little bit of feminine touch, and for that we decided to give her wide obi, which is pretty iconic for the women's hakama. And later on, that works better with the keyless sash. We also made several artistic decisions, and first was new harness. Traditionally, there's a harness called tatsuki, which is for tie-up sleeve for physical labor or fighting. And it usually, the backside is like this X shape. We decided to modify this and give new version of it for the gear holder. And while we decided to make a new one, we decided to make it as asymmetrical on the back. That works better for visually and works better in simulation with the cape. Another artistic decision that we made is cape. As you see, this cape, it's not regular shape of cape. It just looked cool, so we liked it. And we want to make this with putting some traditional Japanese aspect in it. So how we did it, we decided to mix igote with cape. Igote is the one sleeve arm protector that usually used for archery. Why we choose this? Because she already have the chest armor, which called muneate, and that is also used in archery. So it's perfect fit to bring this together and then mix it. It keeps unique concept design while staying grounded in reality. After making all this decision, we move to the marvelous designer. We gather all the base file for the clothing that I just mentioned. Here is kimono and hakama. And it was male kimono and hakama, so I had to fit to the female body. And we adjust and modify it to fit the concept. Like I said, wide obi, and then also there's capes, and the harness placeholder is added at this stage. After done with adjusting in Marvelous Designer, we move to ZBrush. And here again, we are adding some more assets like masks, arm guard, harness, chest piece, like shoes. Those kind of assets need to be added in the ZBrush. ZBrush stage. And at this stage, we add some details. especially wear and tear detail on fabric. This is not the final, but it gives a guideline later on when we make alpha mat and placing the freight card. Here's some high-res finish look on your armor. Rank 1 has basic clothing and harness and hat. As Rolla and Emery mentioned, we've made the outfit feels more like reward for rank progression. So here's rank 2, has full mask, cape, arm guard, and gold bottle. And rank 3, we add hat with new mask or new mask, new harness, chest armor, and modified cape. After done with all the sculpting, we make the game ready mesh. And we already cover this part, so I'm not going to repeat much. At this stage, we arrange shareable assets. Like between the ranks, there's an asset that you can share, so you don't need to make it twice. And at this stage, we also add the freight card and fur card. Next, move to the texture. This is a very clothing heavy outfit. Not like heavy armor outfit. There's not much of a big silhouette change between ranks. So we have to give that change through the texture stage. We make it progressively get fancier each rank. Like rank 1 has basic linen like non-shiny fabric. Rank 2 has a hint of silk and the pattern. And rank 3, more shiny silk with a complex pattern. Here's the look, the final result after shader tweaking. There's every aspect that we already talked about. Like rank 1 have very basic kimono and hakama with a wider obi, work with well with the Achilles sash and not shiny linen material. Rank 2, we got full mask and the cape. Make sure the fur is working well and all the new assets. And rank 3, here, yeah, this stage we tweak the make sure the fur looking well and also silk is working well in engine. Because our design decision was so grounded in research, the final outfit felt very believable. We are actually able to produce a real-life version of the costume that was worn by Erika Ishii at Tokyo Game Show in Japan. Because the logic of the layers and the construction was already there, it didn't look like too costumey or feel out of place. It just worked as actual garment. That's it. Thank you.
Anton, I think you're muted.
Very sorry. I thought I unmuted. Yeah, thank you so much for all of the insight into the process of creating the characters. It's amazing. I guess with that, we can jump into some QA, and maybe I think the first question I saw that is maybe geared towards something that you brought up in your part of the presentation, Omar. There was a question about base meshes and their use, and you of course went through the process of how they're used because of technical reasons and reuse and how everything has to work together with the animation systems. Obviously, there was a question about are there any circumstances where you guys will do like a one-off mesh for a certain character?
No, we very rarely do, and the team can correct me if I'm wrong, but we very rarely do a one-off mesh because there's so many other technical limitations to it, like skinning data. It's tied to what we refer to as like the vertex order. So we want to make sure that that's maintained between each and every head. If we do decide to sculpt a head and not actually start from the base topology, we'll still eventually have to wrap that topology to that head. and make sure that like you saw like the region maps where we were outlining the cheekbones and eyes and stuff, make sure that that all still matches like where those regions are.
Sure.
So that when it goes to tech art and animation and cinematics, it causes as few issues as possible. I mean, sometimes we ran into issues where that region map like wasn't perfect, and we would have to go back in and kind of correct, like make sure that the lip line is exactly where it is, because even small details could kind of cause like noticeable issues.
Nice. Thanks for the explanation. That's great. Another question popping up in the chat, and maybe just throw it out to everybody that's involved in the character creation process. And I guess this is kind of a difficult question to answer, given things go through the design process and concept art all the way through final game art, ready art. But how long generally does it take to create one character?
Yeah, that's, I think everyone's smiling because it's such a hard thing to estimate, because it's determined on the complexity of the costume. We also have how many different ranks. If we're gonna do ranks, is it modular? How many modular pieces are we adding to it? How many variations are there? And also our characters are kind of broken up into pipelines. Like you might think a character as one character, but we may think about them as a variety of pipelines, right? Like we're doing the costume this, for this, time period, and then we're going to move on to the Saya kit that we talked about, or maybe this character has a few different weapons. Then maybe we'll move on to like hair, which is done through, we have like external vendors who help us. So we're working with what their timeline is. Then maybe a different person will do the face. And sometimes like characters are even broken up between a variety of different artists. Like one artist might do a sculpt, while another artist might do the texturing for one.
Sure.
So it's really,
it's an impossible question to answer.
Hard to gauge. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you, like it's months. I mean, it's the culmination of months of work.
And of course. Let's see. Lots of questions popping up. There's a question about historical accuracy. What makes the team choose a character to integrate into the world and its narrative? How do you make these choices as far as like design choices with, and I know there's a lot of discussion of this in the presentation, but is there anything that
So like how do we decide to whether like a narrative character deserves like a kind of like a custom outfit versus like a narrative character just being kind of like an NPC?
Yeah, it sounds like that. It's like how do you choose to make a character sort of more integrated into the world versus how they stand out?
Sure. So a lot of times we just we try to see what the emotional impact and resonance is of a character, right? If let's say a character is written but they don't have a large scene, but that scene is really impactful, then we might try to invest like a lot of like custom work to making that character unique. While maybe a character is not that impactful, but it's emergent, so they just appear a bunch of times and you're always running in, so then that person might get some custom attention. But maybe there's someone who's written to the story and they just like run up to a commander and they're like, we're under attack, and then they run away. Like that'll just be kind of like an NPC. We won't integrate that character into the story. We try to gauge this, but it's really, really hard to gauge because sometimes the story is being constantly like written and adjustments are being made. So characters become important and we invest a lot of time, and then they're written down, just like making a movie, right? Maybe an actor has a big role and then in the final movie they're cut or something like that. So we're always trying to balance. But that also means on the other end that a character that we didn't think was going to be important ended up becoming very important. And we'd have to like adjust our production schedule to account for a character that's maybe becoming more popular, and it could be like his role was written up or her role was written up. Or potentially, we we just noticed through feedback that people are just really think this person's funny and they want more of that person, or they really like this character and they're interested. And we try to stay fluid enough to support that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. With a follow-up to that, somebody else was asking about your references. What kind of places do you guys go to find the references for all of these very historical things? They bring up, do you guys go to museums? Are there special archives that you look at, or find actual physical things? I imagine it's a mix of all of that.
Actually, earlier of our production, we sent small team to Japan, actually, and they took lots of real reference from there. And also, we Google, Pinterest, YouTube, internet out there everywhere, and books also.
Awesome. All right. Let's see.
One other interesting thing just to add to that, what I like to see too is there's always like an artist, what they're interested in also seems to kind of be like what they find like reference for, right? Like I'll just give you an example. Like Ellie is like really into costume design, so there's all these really unique details that start to come out in like a lot of the characters that maybe I or another character artist wouldn't necessarily think about. Emery, as you can see in his background, is like super into weapons, so he's always like thinking about like telling you the different names of these pieces and how it was crafted, and because he's interested in it, he's spends more time in it, and just like the passion kind of comes out in the character.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another question that's coming up is, and it seems like this was sort of answered in that, there's this massive amount of characters that are in the game. Does that system that you were talking about, as far as there being modularity with the characters, how does that work into the creation of the like NPC characters and things like that as well?
Yeah, I don't know, Emery, if you want to chat about that, because you work a lot with the modularity of the raiders.
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that. It's basically a very collaborative process, the modularity, especially at the beginning, because once we decide which parts could be modular, both in like different factions or like different ranks within the same faction, or even within the same rank, as Omar showed, we can have modularity. So when you have like 5 of the same like grunt guys surround you during combat, we don't want all of them to look identical. So for that, we basically work with Lola and other concept artists, and they basically, when they come up with these ideas and 2D concepts, they do like some additive designs, not all additive, but like when they would have basically a base design, and then they would add stuff on top of that can be removed, added, and then we basically make sure in ZBrush or whatever program we're using to have those pieces. When you remove that, the whatever you're seeing underneath that, say it's a shoulder pad, right? When you remove the shoulder pad, it shouldn't be empty there. We model the whole thing based on that. That would make sense when you remove the modular parts. And then also when we do the textures and UVs, we pay special attention to those areas as well. Maybe modular parts are in their own UV space and things like that. So it requires a lot of planning.
Yeah, I would imagine. That's really great. One question that always gets asked: what's the poly count budget like for a hero character on Yote?
More than our engineers would want. They're really heavy. And they're pretty expensive, but our team does such a good job of making them performative and making sure that they like run super well on screen. It's kind of hard because I don't want to be too honest and say like
Sure.
not a serious budget, but because then I'll be yelled at. But it's pretty high, and you know, it just there's flexibility. It's kind of a non-answer, but I'll give an example. For if a character has a very expensive rendering feature, then that might make the character cost more than maybe the polygons themselves.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we have kind of a system to just measure what the total cost of a character is. So it may not necessarily just be polygons. The tech art team and the rendering team do such a good job making like simulation affordable, and the way that we dynamically LOD characters to allow them to have more on screen at a time. It's a real Herculean effort from a variety of very, very smart people that allow us to be flexible with our poly counts, but there are, you know, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's always a big push and pull to get all that stuff in, especially right at the end, I'm sure. All right, let's see. I guess kind of much more general question that's coming in from the chat. What is your advice for somebody who wants to break into the industry creating character art for games?
I don't know if does anyone else have a good thought on that? So what would I say? What's good advice for someone trying to break into character art for games? One thing I would really focus on is having a strong portfolio, but also a curated portfolio. Sometimes I think that when people apply, sometimes it could be like, here's all of my art, but also like as you grow as an artist, you know, maybe your ability is not represented by a piece that you might have done like 5 years ago. As you become, you know, a seasoned professional, the work will vary because it depends on project or whatever, but you don't know who's looking at your portfolio. So someone might see something that's you did 5 years ago, and that might be their assessment of you as an artist, even though it might say on ArtStation or your website, this was done 5 years ago. They're not necessarily like looking at that, right? They're only judging you on kind of like what they've seen. You know, and then as the candidates narrow, that's when you start to kind of look at those things. You really try to find like people's unique style and what are their habits. Not only do they present well, but are they telling a story? Like we definitely have talks within the character team. Like when someone is applying for a character art position, usually the whole team reviews the portfolio. Like we all kind of look at it, and we all kind of talk about it. And we always love when people like add that little extra detail, right? Like maybe they pose the character and they like add a little lamp and a little pedestal, and they're trying to think about visual storytelling as opposed to just like, look how much detail I have on this specific asset. You know, try to you know, bring the character to life as much as possible.
Nice. That's some good advice. And an interesting follow-up to that. Somebody had a question about how the character teams works with the narrative designers. How does that collaborative process work?
A lot of times we're bouncing back and forth, discussing like what they think is important and what kind of our budget is, and then being flexible and having like an open collaboration. So they'll be like, hey, I have this really great idea for this kind of character. And then we'll be like, oh, we're over budget. We already have a bunch of characters that we're filling. Like, is there anything that we can do? Maybe maybe a character in the future gets cut, and then we make room for this character. Maybe we decide to like, maybe we give them a small adjustment, like they get like a unique color and maybe like a unique face mask or something like that helps them stand out. And we're just always trying to balance like the production needs and like collaborating with writing. And the more detail we have in a character bio, the more detail we can use to customize their character. Like Emery showed, adding all those detail to the exiled shogun's armor. That's because he was such like a well thought out character. And like Lolo, you saw like how in depth she was thinking about the evolution of the spider lily armor. Like when we get those kind of references, that like inspires us, and that opens us up to even add like another level of dimensionality to the character and kind of like push them even further. So we're always working with narrative, and we're always trying to gauge like, what is our cast? Is it a, can we complete this? Can we do this cast in a reasonable budget? And then trying to work with them to find out who are the most memorable characters so that we can focus on them.
Great. There's a question here about again a question about historical accuracy and about whether there are times when you end up breaking that to make the designs more visually appealing, and if you have like examples of things like that where you have to change and break stuff to make it fit.
Yes. So there's always debate about the historical accuracy. It's like, especially, I am quite being picky about it after studying about all these rules of the kimono. So whenever we see the concept, if it's like really crucial rule, then I just talk to the artist, the concept artist, about this should not be this way, even though I know it's artist, it looks visually very cool. But there's like, for example, like on your armor, the cape, it's like that kind of cape is not really authentic cape, but if I can find a way to work it with like mix, like finding some aspect that I can find in the reference, then we just go for it because it looks cool. We cannot make everything like historically accurate. I mean, I don't know what is exactly historically accurate. I'm not the professional of kimono and Japanese traditional clothing, but yeah, we try just our best to not to like break the too crucial rule and still make cool outfit. Yeah,
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, from a concept art standpoint, it's the same as what Ellie just said. Because we're not making this like kind of like museum costume pieces. We're still making art for video games. So like that wow factor still needs to be there. It cannot look like completely flat and like the silhouette wise. So we still need to find like that artistic freedom versus the accuracy. Like we need to find like the balance for each costume.
Awesome. That makes sense. That's great. There's another question about portfolios, which is a good one. It comes up a lot at Gnomon. Do you, in your, and this is kind of an opinion thing and what you think, do you think it's important to build your portfolio towards the style and themes that are being, worked on at a specific studio, or do you think that it's better to sort of have varied styles and art that's geared towards certain genres or types of games?
I think for some studios it definitely helps, but not all. Like I love seeing a portfolio with a variety of different styles. I know a lot of our character artists do, but like my guess is that if you're trying to get a job at like Blizzard or something, they have a very distinct style and their games last a very long time. So it would, probably be smart to really work hard and develop that distinct style. For us, of course, we'd like to see that you can actually like hit realism. If you have some historical realism, that's also really good. But I personally like to see artists play as well, right? Like do things that are unique and weird. It's kind of really up to who's looking at your portfolio. But I would say it's probably smart if you really want to get a job at a very specific place to tailor your portfolio a little bit, but still do things that excite you, because that'll keep your work really good. And passion will be infused into it.
Sure, and of course, and who knows, Sucker Punch may not make another Ghost game next, right? So if you have more varied work in your portfolio, it could be more interesting to see different types of styles as well.
I would also I would agree with Omar and also say that sometimes I see portfolios like newly graduate portfolios or student portfolios that kind of try to hit all the notes at the same time, all kinds of different styles, characters, environments, concept art. From my personal experience, I would say, choose one or two things, and then be really good at them instead of being mediocre on a lot of different things. And obviously, like Omar said, if you're shooting for like a very specific studio, they would want to see their style in your portfolio. But to me as well, it's always a plus to see other styles, a variety in your portfolio, as long as you're actually hitting that one specific thing that I'm looking for as well in terms of style and everything.
All right, thank you. All right, somebody's I don't know how to phrase this question. You mentioned that certain things on the team get outsourced, like hair. Are there any other parts of the pipeline that rely on outsourcing that you can talk about, I guess?
Yeah, every aspect of it.
Yeah.
We rely like a lot. Like you'll see, like there's definitely a lot of like co-development studios. Like there's just so much work. We just work with such amazing teams. It allows us some flexibility. We also have a amazing like internal team that manages those relationships. But for our team, like we talked about, like a character at scale, sometimes it's things that require like a different level of expertise, or sometimes that can help like speed up our development process. So we definitely have a lot of good relationships with a lot of good partners.
Right. Yeah. There's such a vast amount of artwork that needs to be created for a game like that. It's just almost a necessity, I imagine. All right. I'm digging through here. And if you guys have any questions, please throw them in the chat.
One question that I kind of liked that I think the team would be interested.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Everyone here has their own unique style. How do they adapt to different artistic styles? So I'm actually kind of curious to hear from the team.
Yeah, that's a good one. Actually, that's my favorite part about our team, because like everyone has their own unique flavor. Of course, character team did an amazing job, like translate everyone's different style into like this cohesive like character production stuff. So big props to character team. But from a concept art standpoint, we don't have like a universal like rule for, oh, you should do this style. We kind of like encourage like all of us to kind of like to be our own kind of like artistic, to have our own artistic freedom. So I guess that's what makes us like more exciting about like each character, and like to create our own version of like what we think will be cool for this design.
Yeah, it was also I would say it was kind of a learning curve as well for all of us to kind of match styles. Even though I'm not sure if it's still in the game, like it matches like perfectly, which is I think a good thing because it's all like different flavors. What matters is that it matches the overall aesthetic and lives in the same world, which I think it does. And then there's also a different aspect to that, which kind of touches on one of the earlier questions, is what, in terms of like style, what reads Japanese? Because it actually takes some time to get used to that Japanese. It's a very specific style. So not just by like looking at things and then copying them, it's a whole kind of a style to wrap our heads around. And then also like about historical accuracy stuff that came up earlier. It doesn't have to be historically accurate, but it needs to read Japanese, and it needs to read like it could go in that world, and like support that samurai fantasy. So those were kind of like different things that we all worked on together, and then we did some back and forth with different ideas. A lot of feedback went into it, and then you start slowly honing the style, find that style.
Nice. All right. One other question just came in, and maybe this can go out to everybody as well. What was your favorite character to work on, and why in the project?
Snake.
Child. Oh, I had no problem with that. I don't know. I have a hard time with that.
Sure.
With different ones that I really liked, I really loved. I really had a good time working on the Oni, but I also had a good time working on a character called like the Bomb Sensei, Bomb Artisan, who actually their role got cut pretty significantly in their production. So they're not necessarily front and center, but I liked the uniqueness of their costume.
That's cool. All right.
Ellie, Emery, do you have any favorites?
I personally love working on villains.
Same.
Same for the first game as well. I just find them more fun to work on. They have bigger shapes, kind of louder. I would say either the Kitsune for this project, because it's very simple, but also the shape language is super intense and like in your face. So it's like very fun to kind of look at, and also because the design is kind of simple with like not a lot of color and different materials and stuff. It was up to the like primary shapes and like some of the detail that went in to really make the character pop. So yeah, that was a fun one.
Nice.
Mine was Spider, really, I have to say. Because, I don't know, that one had like quite a good balance between the clothing and the armor. And it was like very delicate design also. So I just had fun like working it like from the marvelous designer work and like sculpting, and also even texture work was really fun to do it.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, I'll say Snake, because he's the character that I basically passed on a first go. Like Ninja, like Omar knows that. Like we did like so many, like 100 iterations. I think like we probably did like at least like a dozen iterations. But Snake, he's like the first guy that we're like, that's it. Like we loves it. Also like just like I really like to do some weird characters, punchable characters. So because like you have like a lot of like artistic freedom with them. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, the villains really do stand out. They're so kind of bombastic in the game, and they're so interesting. They really have a special flavor to them. It's awesome.
I think there's a character artist who's not here today who did a lot of work on the snake, Enon, and he took it to like the next level when he was making this guy like super grimy and super greasy and like really took attention, and you could tell that like he was having fun with it because the guy just really stands out, and it was just good because it's like the first person you meet, even though like you kill him pretty quickly, but it's like that's your introduction, and like him and Lola like knocked it out of the park. Just like the environment, everyone just really cool character.
Nice. Is there any ever a case where you guys have to kind of like dial that stuff back to bring it, have it not go too stylized? Or
I think the opposite is more often true.
oh really? Yeah, makes sense.
I would say that a lot of times we are holding ourselves back. And we really get good responses when we're kind of wild within reason, but I feel like we can actually go further than we do sometimes. Because then, you know, after the game show, you see people's reactions, and they just like, people love crazy shit, right? So it's like that's what they and you can be bold, and it is an art form, right? So it allows us for a lot of play.
I think the only time that we get kind of pushback on characters going too crazy is about technical limitations, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, something so big that it actually doesn't work for the rig, or it clips through, whatever, that kind of stuff, we have to push back.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The characters sometimes when they fight, they have to like take off their oversized jackets and stuff like that because it would not be functional. We've done this in both games too.
All right. Wow. I think we're getting close to 9. Are you guys feeling like you want to wrap up, or should we take some more questions?
That's up to you guys.
Maybe a couple
Right.
more, and then
Yeah. Let's see. Is there one that stands out to you guys? I now know that you guys are seeing them as well.
What are the team's current favorite games right now? I actually
That's a fun one.
Ghost of Yōtei.
That's the correct answer.
Yeah, that's not correct answer.
Hitman: World of Assassination.
Oh,
I don't know. Recently, I'm just playing very casual game like tower defense kind of, or like building game, Frostpunk kind of thing. Yeah.
that's fun.
Yep.
I'm going to be kind of nostalgic here and say Diablo 2 Resurrected. Just playing the same game for 26 years now.
Always
Nothing of it.
come back to that. It's a great one. All right. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say there's some topical ones too. What are people's thoughts about AI?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Does anybody want to talk about that?
So right now, my personal take, I think I'd be curious to know what the rest of the team thinks. It's good for a lot of like very small things, but for characters, characters are so like art directed and specific that it's hard. It's hard to incorporate abstractions that like maybe like an AI would. Like it would. I haven't seen anything that would, you know, be able to create like the laminar type armor with the laces and weave it through in the right spots and make sure there's a vertex for the tech art team to anchor it to and provide topology. Like, but maybe it's good that like, hey, can you like make this texture that I really like? You make it tileable.
Sure.
Right? That seems, or can you give me like a rough base of a face or something like that? But even the faces, sometimes they look a little weird. I'm sure they're going to get better and we're going to figure out more uses for it. And I think that those uses will grow over time, but we're not necessarily trying to make something that just looks good. We're trying to make something that's highly directed. Like when you see the knots in the armor, like those are historical accurate knots that we had an artist study and do. When it comes to the way that the rope is tied between the shoes, like we are getting in there, like looking at photos and seeing exactly how the rope is tied like through the shoe. We're not necessarily making an abstraction. So for us, it's a little bit different. I feel like it'll be different for each studio depending on what level of quality that they want, and also what happens over over time, right? Where are we in 5 years? I don't have any idea. That's my interpretation right now, my perception right now.
Yeah, and it seems like AI, usually what AI generates is so averaged out, kind of, that when you need something that is very specific like that, it's always going to kind of kick out and generate something that's kind of an amalgamation of multiple sources that it blends together, sort of. Maybe that's something. There's something to that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel intentional to me.
Right.
So there's always a human intention on like every small stuff that we make, every piece of art. So that even when AI, which it will get really good at, like, generating 3D models and all that kind of stuff. Intention on every single detail is not there because there's nothing to pull from, basically, for the AI. Apart from the obvious copyright infringement and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
Also,
a lot.
the design problems we're solving are very specific, like very context driven. So it's like, okay, this character, we got this bio, like it's based on this setting, and then this character has to feel this way, certain way. So it has to be done by human after tons of research, and then like the result has to be, very kind of like personal. What makes you feel? So
Sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, ending on that serious topic, I guess we'll wrap things up. Thank you so much for all your time and the wonderful presentation. It's so detailed and interesting. Just get a glimpse inside of the amazing processes that you guys go through to create the amazing world that we get to experience in the game. Just to wrap up, thank you all of you out there in internet land on the stream for joining us. Obviously, just want to reiterate that Gnomon does host monthly industry events, both on campus and obviously here on the stream. Please be sure to join our mailing list so you can be notified of when we're going to have these amazing opportunities to hear from all of these industry artists, and also follow us on social media. You can get notifications to stay up to date on when we're going to be having upcoming events. All right. Thank you so much, you guys, for spending the evening with us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. And thanks for everyone who took the time out of their night, or I don't know what time it is, wherever they live, but come listen to us babble on for a little bit.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you.